Hi, my name is Kenny Domingos, and I got a question for you. Have you ever considered how the media shapes our understanding of our historical figures? Imagine a world where one man's legacy is overshadowed by a selective narrative presented by mainstream media. Well, this is the reality for Malcolm X. Minister in the Nation of Islam, the founder of Muslim Mosque Inc., considered one of the greatest Muslims in the world, and a pivotal figure during the civil rights movement. As we dive into this topic, we'll explore how mainstream media has painted a narrow picture of Malcolm X by focusing heavily on his perceived commitment to violence while downplaying his broader message for internationalism and social justice. Now, how, you may ask? When it comes to activists and national leaders, media can be essential when it comes to making a debut, or when you're trying to spread your message to form basic supporters. Media serves many purposes, the main one being that it serves as a platform for a figure to be able to communicate with his audience. For Malcolm X, his platform came through the Nation of Islam, where he was speaking for and to Muslims in America. Even after he separated from the Nation of Islam, he formed his own platform to speak on. Malcolm X oftentimes represented the Nation of Islam on mainstream media. An example being that his interview at Barclay, where he spoke on black separatism and how the black man in America failed to recognize their true worth at the moment. But this interview opens up with them asking Malcolm X to describe the Nation of Islam. But the interview first describes the Nation of Islam as an organization dedicated to its violent means to attain its goals, and then proceeds to ask whether it's true or not, and why it's perceived by that definition. Malcolm starts to describe Muslims by stating that they had never committed the same violent crimes that white people have committed against black people in America. He also explains that the reason why they're perceived that way is because it stems from a guilt complex that exists on the conscience of black people. He continues his answers by stating that whites who inflict violence on blacks are never made synonymous with the word violence, but instead blacks who had violence inflicted upon them are the ones being made synonymous with the word violence, and it plays a big part in a propaganda tactic, psychological warfare. Malcolm X calls it out, making the image of Muslims violent instead of religious. Now, mainstream media during that time of Malcolm X wasn't in the newspapers that the Nation of Islam was sending out, called Muhammad Speaks, and it wasn't in the rallies that Malcolm X was speaking at either. But instead, it was in the newspapers that the white man had, and also the news channel. They controlled the pool of the majority of the news spectators and newspaper readers. Now, with that being said, it brings me to my main point. And my main point being that mainstream media has played a significant role in shaping the public's perception of Malcolm X by overemphasizing his commitment to violence while neglecting his internationalism. Through selective portrayal, biased narratives, media outlets have perpetuated a distorted image of Malcolm X, overshadowing his contributions to the civil rights movement and his advocacy for global justice. By examining the historical context, media representations, and their impact on public discourse, this resource blog will demonstrate how mainstream media has influenced our understanding of Malcolm X, ultimately shaping the way that he's remembered and interpreted in pop culture. But even through it all, our king is still smiling. A clear example of how Malcolm X is perceived through the media is through his autobiography written by himself and Alex Haley, and his first TV debut in a documentary-styled film called The Hate That the Hate Produced by Mike Wallace and Louis Lomax. In the book, Malcolm X describes his life from his point of view. He's narrating and telling us how he feels, and he explains his memories and moments. Through reading his autobiography, you start to understand more about Malcolm X on a personal level. And as you read it, you understand his experience as a black boy in America. You read and you understand the decisions that he made and where he got his inspirations from. And you also start to get a glimpse of how he formed his resolve and how he came to be the prominent figure that we know him as today. According to Nash Petropoulos, he describes the autobiography and the film Malcolm X by Spike Lee in 1992 as something that lets most viewers know about the aspects of Malcolm X's life. On this documentary, The Hate That the Hate Produced, the viewer gets a different perspective of who the leaders are in the Nation of Islam. It starts off by having a white man narrate and explain about what the Nation of Islam are by his definition. Now, why would mainstream media want to do that to somebody who's considered one of the greatest Muslims in the world? Before that question, you must ask, who controls the media? When you figure that out, and figure out that it's controlled by white people and people in power, till this day, you understand that Malcolm X was preaching about the empowerment of black people, who white people oppressed all over the world. Malcolm X was a man who realized his rights as an American citizen. He recognized his rights to self-defense, and it was also preached by Elijah Muhammad that a Muslim must learn self-defense to be able to rely on himself to protect himself and his community against threats. Media used Malcolm X's awareness and the Nation of Islam's freedom to exercise self-defense to twist it and publicize it so that it comes across as a violent and anti-American nation that prays, plans, and waits for the downfall of the white man. It becomes a full circle moment when you understand where everything comes from and why it came to be. But in the end, everybody knows that Malcolm spoke for and related to a multitude of black people during his time and even now. But he didn't have the same appeal for white people as he did to black people. Part of that is because there's not a lot of white folks in America that are oppressed or that can relate to the life of Malcolm X. But the other part is that the media has made attempts to villainize and silence his voice as he speaks for change and the truth. But even today, black people all over the world continue to carry his legacy and keep his name alive. And with that, this is the conclusion of my research vlog. Thank you.